3mm swim stim green pellets. What we're going to do, I'm going to soak them how a lot of people say you should soak them. Freezing cold water this is, straight out of the tap. Completely soaked, completely covered. Starting the stopwatch now. So our 4mm pellets have been soaking completely submerged in water for nearly 3 minutes. So 3 minutes is up. I shall drain them all off. This is generally the recommended amount of time to soak 3mm pellets if you're preparing them for a method feeder. 3mm, 3 minutes, 2mm, 2 minutes. I'm sure you've heard all this before, but this is my experiment. Let's see how we go. So those now can be completely drained off. Straight through this sieve, so there's no way that any of the liquid's going to be hanging around. I'm just going to leave those now to drain. Here we are, same pellets. And again, we're going to submerge them just like we did before. This time not quite so much submerged. So you can see that they're just covered. Right. Hopefully you can see that they're just covered. And they're going to be left until all the water's soaked up, and we'll have a completely different soaked pellet to compare the performance of against those ones there, which we did a second ago, which are on the riddle drawing out. So here's the next experiment. A couple of Banjo feeders, small Banjo feeders from Preston. I don't think it really matters which ones, but I just thought I'd mention that. Here, the one on the left you can see is the one, you can see the difference here, and the difference is becoming more stark, and that might be because obviously we're getting further and further along in time, and the pellets have had a bit more time to soak up even more water. So I think these completely soaked pellets have really taken on as much water as they can now, and you can visibly see that you can almost see that they're significantly larger than those. Maybe that equates to less food going in the same amount of a feeder, because each pellet's taking up more space. That might be a factor as well to consider. Let's just drop these in, see what happens. So there we are, the feeder on the right, just for clarification, is the one that has only been soaked for 3 minutes, then drained off, and the feeder on the left is the one that has been soaked until it's absorbed all of the water, so it's completely soaked. And what is interesting, you might not be able to see from this angle, but you might be able to see from this angle, is that the feeder on the right seems to have pushed up a bit quicker. The one with the, the less soaked pellets, but the feeder on the left now is catching up, and there's not been a lot of time difference between the two. It seems to me that the feeder on the right there has stayed as more of a neat pile, which is kind of what you're looking for with these sort of Banjo feeders and hybrid feeders. Only a few pellets have come out, so if your hook bait was still in the middle, you're more likely for the fish to be sort of attacking that pile of feed from that position, whereas the one on the left, there are a lot of pellets around the edge, a lot more maybe. That just gives the fish a bigger target area, and that makes a difference. I don't know, what do you think? When we look from the top there, you can really see what I mean about that target area. The sort of over-soaked pellets have really spread out, gone over a bigger area, so has that negated. Does that just turn that back into a method feeder, which is what you're not really looking for? And are you really looking more for that on the right there? Here I am repeating that experiment again with the Banjo feeders. Again, this time the one on the right is the feeder that's been soaked more, and the one on the left is the feeder that's been dipped for 3 minutes. I had a thought that perhaps because the pellets on the right were softer in the previous experiment, that I'd pushed them in a bit more, because I just tried to fill them flush, but because they were softer, that meant that potentially I could squeeze them smaller and get more pellets in, even though they were flush. So I've been very careful not to squeeze them as hard this time and make sure that they were certainly no more than flush. And on this occasion, they performed very similarly. So again, how you load the feeder has been a big impact here. And on both occasions that we've had an impact on how you load the feeder, it's been the softer pellets which are more prone to things going wrong. If you squeeze the softer pellets too hard into the pellet feeder, then they didn't come out so well. And if you squeeze too many pellets into your Banjo feeder, then you're potentially losing that presentation that the Banjo feeder gives you. As you can see here, there's pretty much nothing to pick between these two. And if we just drop down to this side, there's very little to pick again. Both performing very similarly. And so if you are using the more soaked pellets, you might need to be a bit more cautious about loading both the Banjo feeder and the pellet feeder, whereas the method feeder seems less of an issue, because you are looking for a pile there. So if you end up putting a few more on and squeezing a few more in to the method feeder mould, it doesn't really matter, because they just expand back out and you're away. Whereas with the pellet feeder and the Banjo feeder, it seems that if you put too many in on the pellet feeder, they just can't get out because they're too wedged in, and so that you end up with a poor presentation. And on the method feeder, and on the Banjo feeder, they end up piling out the top and ruining that nice tidy little presentation that you get.